The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Todd, we're going live. Todd, you're going to have to mute Todd. Good morning, everybody. That is right. It is Tuesday, May 13th.
Website, the company emphasized
Todd,
to, quote, bring blatant testing corruption to
need to
an
mute
end,
Todd.
Quote, without holding cannabis firms accountable for their products, the Post continued.
Todd.
The market suffers further deterioration and becomes a cesspool
you guys.
of bad behavior.
Todd. Yo.
Todd Denkin with I9 News, Acacia Labs.
Todd.
Inconsistent records, falsifying reports, untrained technicians.
Todd.
Not following mandated regulations, and a whole lot more. What should the penalty be for losing faith?
Does he have his volume off?
I don't know, something. Todd, we are live, bro. Todd, what is going on? Jeez Louise. Jeez Louise. Anyways.
Question is, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you guys just fine. Todd, do you not hear us?
I hardly hear Jason.
Todd, we are live right now, bro. You've been doing your whole read live.
Oh shit, sorry about that.
Yeah, geez. Oh man. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you guys love the blooper reel because today is Tuesday, May 13th. And today is National Crouton Day today, you guys.
Love croutons.
Yeah, look at that. Now you hear me. Look at that. That's amazing. It's also National Fruit Cocktail Day, you guys.
Love the fruit cocktail.
National Apple Pie Day.
Oh, food happening today.
Yeah, lots of food. Yeah, bro. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Scarf it down, bro. And let's see. It's also National Frog Jumping Day today, you guys.
It's an interesting one.
How frog jumping gets their own day. The process like.
Have you ever seen one of those frog jumping contests?
Yeah.
They're super interesting how they make their frogs jump. You ever seen a frog jumping contest?
Only ones we've had.
No, but it's on my bucket list. You can be sure.
Okay, all right. I mean, I used to play Frogger as a kid on Atari, so like you know what I mean. That's what I think of National Frog Jumping Day.
It's tough to cross the street as a frog.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I was surprised they didn't have a chicken instead of a frog, but you know, nonetheless.
Right.
Anyways, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet, and we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And it looks like we are waiting on Jenny Beth to arrive. And so while we are waiting for her with a hair and makeup department to finish up, apparently today they're having a delay, we're going to roll right into Mr. Michael Minardi. Michael Minardi is a lawyer out in the great red state of Florida, even though he's not as red as the state, but he is all about that law. He's been working on cannabis legalization progress in the great state of Florida and nationwide for over 20 years and representing patients across the country. It is Mr. Michael Minardi.
Hello, everyone. Happy high noon on the East Coast. And although, Jason, you know I am red. I ran red in 2020.
Oh, you are. That's right. That's true. You are. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's fair. That's fair. My bad. I did not mean to. You know what I'm saying?
You know, I understand. With this issue, we have to tote the fence line, right?
Yeah.
Because cannabis and psychedelics are typically not red issues, but freedom is, especially in Florida, you know? So I believe drug use should be something that we're all free to use responsibly. As they say, 80% of drug users do not become addicted.
Yeah.
So today we're doing psychedelics. And this is an article that came out earlier this morning. Psychedelics linked to religious disaffiliation, but not spiritual change in a large-scale study. And so in this study, published in the Psychology of Religion and Spirituality, it examined whether psychedelic use is associated with changes in religious beliefs and spiritual identity. Analyzing two large birth cohorts in the UK and a longitudinal survey in the United States and United Kingdom, researchers found that people who had used psychedelics were more likely to report religious disaffiliation. But psychedelic use was not associated with changes in spirituality or religiosity over time. Classic psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin have been long associated with mystical or spiritual experiences. Many studies have examined how these substances affect perceptions of meaning, self, and transcendent. But few have asked whether psychedelic use leads to actual changes into religious identity or beliefs in everyday life. As both a psychology researcher and rabbi, this person was interested in life experiences that influence religious and spiritual development. With the resurgence of psychedelic research, there has been much discussion about the intersection of psychedelic and spirituality, and very little research had examined long-term patterns. We know in the US, what brought psychedelics back was the New York study regarding people dying with cancer and their experiences with psychedelics in end-of-life care. To investigate, the researchers conducted two complementary studies. The first drew two national representative birth cohorts, the 1958 National Child Developmental Study and the 1970 British Cohort Study, each with over 11,000 participants. The goal was to explore whether people who would use psychedelics differed in their religious affiliation and whether they were more likely to report switching, leaving, or journeying the religion. The second study was a 2-month study of 9,732 adults in the United Kingdom and United States, looking at recent psychedelic use and whether or not it predicted changes in self-identified religiosity or spirituality. In Study 1, the researchers used long-term data from the cohort studies to compare participants who reported lifetime use of psychedelics, specifically LSD and psilocybin, with those who did not. They found that people who had used psychedelics were more likely to report being religiously unaffiliated, both in childhood and adulthood. Psychedelic users were also more likely to report religious disaffiliation, shifting from religious identity in childhood to no religious identity in adulthood. However, interesting, LSD was also associated with switching between religious affiliations, and in one of the cohorts, joining a religion after being raised without one. However, these patterns were not unique to psychedelics. Similar associations were found with other illicit substances, such as cannabis and amphetamines. And it's interesting they only note those two other substances. This suggests that psychedelic use may not have a distinct effect on religious change, but rather reflect broader patterns related to drug use and social norms. I do think it's interesting that they don't, where otherwise in this country, we usually consider cannabis as a mild psychedelic. In addition to changes in affiliation, the researchers also looked at belief in God and the afterlife. Those who'd used psychedelics were more likely to say they did not believe in God or were unsure of God's existence. They were also less likely to believe in afterlife, death. Again, this was consistent with broader patterns among users of various illicit substances, and I am surprised by those. Study 2 explored whether psychedelic use was associated with short-term changes and a religious or spiritual identity. The researchers recruited representative samples of adults in the United States and UK and surveyed them twice, 2 months apart. They asked participants how religious and how spiritual they considered themselves to be and whether they had used psychedelics in the past 2 months. At baseline, people who had recently used psychedelics were less likely to identify as religious, but slightly more likely to identify as spiritual. However, when the research followed up, they found no evidence of long-term changes in religiosity or spirituality. People's identification as religious or spiritual remained relatively stable, regardless of whether they had used psychedelics. Taken together, they basically found that this does not provide any sort of long-term belief that moves people towards religious influences. Contrary to popular belief, using psychedelics does not automatically lead people to become more religious or spiritual. Cherniak, one of the authors, says, Summit may affirm previously held beliefs or reduce attachments to traditional or institutional religiosity, but not more than consumption of other illicit substances. It does say that there is more that is taken into account, like psychedelics can elicit experiences that feel spiritual or religious in the moment. They do not always last to translate into changes in religious identity. Instead, the social and cultural context, such as whether someone grows up in a religious household or lives in a secular society, may be more powerful on how they determine their worldview. Psychedelic experiences are deeply personal. Whether they lead to more spiritual openness or disillusionment often depends on factors like your personality and your beliefs before the experience and your intentions for using them. They do say psychedelics may offer more powerful transformative experiences, but they don't know if it'll lead to deeper faith. They need to look more into things like whether or not they're using it for recreational purposes, in ceremonial purposes, or now in a therapeutic setting, being treated through it. So it only spanned 2 months, one of the articles, so it doesn't provide a long-term identity. And so overall, it was a surprise that they did not report greater spirituality after using psychedelics. Cherniak stated, the future study should consider more precise questions about the supposed components of spirituality, which can be vague. In reading this article, I think it's great that it continues to get information out there related to this. One thing that I don't think that I think has a huge influence on this type of issue is the aspect of the dosage that they're giving people and what those dosages are. So what do you guys think about this, and whether or not it brought you to a more spiritual or religious background, and whether or not that substance between LSD and psilocybin versus more like psilocybin, ayahuasca, or bufo would make that difference?
Wow, I mean, I can't believe that they got these kinds of results, Michael. Like, the reality is it's a very spiritual thing with the psychedelic space, and the fact that they're saying that a majority of these people don't believe in any type of afterlife or anything else like that is kind of a trip to me. I mean, DMT is really kind of what did it for me the most personally. You know what I mean? Like DMT, DMT is the spirit molecule. It's in every single living organism on the planet, and your mind experiences a DMT trip only twice in your life, naturally, when you're born and when you leave this world. And DMT is what made me understand string theory. So this is...
Yeah, I was shocked, and especially with the New York study where it did have people had spiritual experiences and things like that. And I really think the dosage is probably a huge impact on how people experience it.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys say, Todd?
Oh, I would say that any positive movement to legalizing psilocybin is a good movement. I think that like patients used cannabis as a way to get cannabis legal, right? Because I need it as my medicine. Could be a religious hit, right? This is part of our religion, so it's got to be legal. I think it's a PR stunt, honestly. whose religion, what religion. You know, there's a gazillion religions out there, right? And
There's also bad religion too, Todd.
Religion.
There's also bad religion. Don't forget that.
What's that?
There's also bad religion too. Don't forget that.
There is also bad religion.
Yeah.
I've talked to lots of people who have tripped on psilocybin and think they saw God. So it could be a religious experience.
What do you think? What do you think, Yarrow? Getting trippy today?
You know, I think Mr. Minardi touched on a couple of the limiting factors in this study, namely that there were only 2 psychedelics used, and it didn't talk about dosage. I wish we had the amazing Matthew St. Germain to opine on this, given his positioning and
that would be good.
Rigorous study of the space. So it's hard for me to ever think I'll be able to fill those shoes with my meager perspectives. That said,
it's your time to shine.
I believe that if people are seeking a spiritual experience by taking psychedelics, there's probably 3 parts to that. One is the type of psychedelic and the dosage. The other is the setting. And the third is probably whether they have a spiritual Sherpa on board to guide, assist, and facilitate. And so I think if we don't look at those 3 as legs of the stool to produce the best results, then the result will probably be more akin to stool. It'll be pretty fucking shitty. So I don't think if you take a bunch of LSD and ride the subway in New York without any assistance, you're going to have the same experience as if you take ecstasy at Yosemite with somebody who's studied how to help people have positive realizations and experiences, right? That's why there were medicine men and medicine women and elders and indigenous tribes and things like that, was to sort of help people to experience things with a particular context. And so I think the study is without that particular context. And I don't think psychedelic use without that particular context is going to produce the same results that we think of when we think of sort of a metamorphosis or transformational event. So there's that. And I've never thought that there wasn't something greater than myself in the universe. So for me, there's never been any lack of proof that there are forces, influences, things much larger than my minuscule humanity. I understand how this article is talking about people sort of maybe disassociating from organized religion. That probably happened more for people who were raised in very religious households than it does for people who weren't raised in religious households. Because if you're disassociating from something, you had to have already been associated with it, right?
Yep.
So I could see how the fluidity and willingness to look at everything through a different set of lenses could cause people who were raised with a certain particular dogma or lens or religious affiliation to sort of pan out, take the 30,000 foot overview and question their relationship to their upbringing. And without really going into at least 5 or 6 different psychedelics and creating a test that includes that setting and that spiritual Sherpa, I don't think we're going to get much out of these kinds of studies.
I mean, I feel like this was kind of skewed study in the sense, especially based off of the results, because there's so many of those psychedelic warriors that say that the psychedelics bring them.
Takes a 4-gram chocolate or a 4 or 5 gram lemon tech, which is equivalent to almost like 15 grams. They're going to have a spiritual experience every single time, I think, in my opinion. So I know it for a fact.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to roll into our first commercial, and we are going to be right back. And Jenny's with us, too. Look at that.
Oh, man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, I left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
I think it's whiting out money.
Yes,
They have money.
and we are back, you guys. And Jenny, are you ready? Are you ready to go into your story, Jenny Beth Dills?
Let's go.
All right. We are gonna go roll and right on in to Miss Jenny Beth Dills. She's the founder of Kind Cannabis that can help you stay on track, whether that's BioTrack or MetTrack or the tracks of life. Also, she's also the founder of Justice Served, a 501c3, that if you've been stuck on the track, she can help you if you are a justice-impaired individual. That's right, is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills.
Oh boy, not the tracks of life. I think most of the people in our audience are old enough to remember the facts of life. So there we go. They'll get the reference. It's cute.
That's
All
right.
right. So Jason picked my story this morning. But I agreed to it. So if there's any complaints, the complaints department, please direct those towards Jason. But from reefer madness to modern wellness, the cannabis industry continues to evolve, and a new shop in suburban Mundelein is the latest sign of just how far public perception has shifted. A few weeks ago, executives from Cannabis, a cannabis company founded by former leaders from McDonald's and Insomnia Cookies — Insomnia Cookies are delicious, by the way — pitched their sleek boutique-style dispensary concept to the Mundelein Village Board. The location, a former bank building. Their look, more fast casual chain than head shop. While some trustees voiced concern, including one who noted the location's proximity to a playground, the majority gave the green light, including trustee Kara Lambert, who as a mom admitted some hesitation. But in the end, she said it seemed no different than a bar and voted yes. Experts say that reaction reflects new reality. Dr. Richard Miller of Northwestern University says cannabis was once completely demonized, likened to heroin and LSD, and used to stigmatize marginalized communities. But today, the image has been replaced, sometimes literally, with cannabis boutiques that look more like Apple stores than dispensaries. Dr. Ashley Humphreys, who researches industry legitimacy, says the turning point came when moms got on board. Quote, "If moms are using it, it's legitimate." In Illinois, dispensaries like Sparked and Winthrop Harbor welcome a broad range of customers, including seniors, teachers, even law enforcement, who now see cannabis as part of wellness lifestyle. But with growth comes new challenges. Some experts warn that branding like cannabis candies may appeal a bit too much to children, and that gas station sales of unregulated cannabis products raise safety concerns. As the industry moves further into the mainstream, researchers like Dr. Miller say there's still a long road ahead, especially while cannabis remains federally illegal, limiting clinical studies and physician training. But he believes that one day cannabis could be a much broader part of modern medicine. For now, cannabis continues to make its case, not just in legislation and in lab results, but in local town halls and neighborhood strip malls. So, do you guys think that mom said it's okay, so that's now why we have found a turning point in the industry? Throw it back to you guys to discuss where you think we are. Yarrow, what do you think, buddy?
Go for it,
I think
Yarrow.
I love the cowboy hat for starters.
Oh boy.
Thank you.
Yeehaw. Yeehaw.
I'm sure that's a cowboy hat.
Does she have?
But not sure it's a cowboy hat.
Does she have a?
It's more like a cowboy went to Paris and won't stop talking about it.
So it's
I
a
just
gay cowboy hat.
Go ahead, Yarrow.
That's mean, Todd. That's real mean. Like, I'm not sure that you have cowboy hat subject matter expertise to begin with. So, no, I'll punt it. I'd rather come in as the last voice and try to find something to disagree with. Cowboy hat jokes aside, I don't really have many opinions about this.
Okay.
I think you're right, Jenny. If mom says it's okay, then it's okay, right?
That's
yeah, I
true.
agree. And that would
I'm the
happen with
boss,
alcohol.
right?
They prohibited alcohol and then they helped, get it back on the shelves. I think it's great. I wish the doctor would kind of be like, with the whole lack of study thing and stuff like that, I think that that's getting old rhetoric and based on old unfounded knowledge. You look at PubMed, there's more studies on cannabis than pretty much any other drug that we know of, single substance. So I'd really like to get past that part. I understand that there's still much to learn from it, but I think they really just have to listen to the people that use it and start let people know what the potential precautions are and dangers and things of that nature, as opposed to all the people who are against cannabis who keep on saying there's not enough studies and it causes danger. And the child thing, we dealt with this so many times here in the state of Florida, and it's very interesting when you look at the poison control reports here in the state, and they complain we got to ban and regulate hemp substances more harshly because of it. The kids that are getting called, the ER room typically are like 5 or 6 and under is the majority of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a matter of kids and things being attractive to children. That's parent supervision. I was in Publix the other day, and as this issue was going through our legislature here in the state of Florida on hemp products, there was, and I love Pale Ale and great, and Sweetwater 420 is great, and I think that's what the brand was. But it was like an IPA beer that was like gummies. It was like gummy flavor, and it was all bright colors and said gummies on it. I had no idea it was alcohol until I looked closely to it. And we know that 90% of the complaints about alcohol companies are centered around their marketing towards children. So I think we got to get over that. Put it in shops exactly like she said that are 21 plus to make sure that it stays out of the hands of children.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. It definitely does need to stay out of the hands of children, but I guess it's kind of like kicks. You know what I mean? It's like kid tested, mother approved. You know what I mean? And I think the Sanjay Gupta story was kind of like the big kind of turning point, I think, overall for moms, because I feel like that whole special was catered to moms, and there was a whole big shift of public perception around cannabis immediately after the Sanjay Gupta special.
Well, I mean, it was cannabis is bad because my mom always told me it was bad and always told me not to do drugs. It's a drug, right? So if mom tells me that it's good and we can get people everybody should listen to their mother. I know my 12-year-old's not watching this show, but please just listen to your mother. I think that if we can change the perception around people that we respect, mothers, community of faith leaders, whatever it is that you look to as your, true north, Jason Beckett's ex, and get that messaging right there, then we can actually change the perception on a grander scale.
X marks the spot, Jenny Beth.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'd have more opinions if this article wasn't like locked behind registering, no matter which browser I tried to use.
Yarrow, we have a thing in resources where you can get around that stuff. So you should utilize that next time.
Yeah, that's if you're choosing to post the article. But for those of us who are looking on the daily feed to track what the other correspondents are bringing.
No, but you can use that so that way you can read it. That's my point.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess I'll be a better correspondent next week.
It's okay. It's all good.
And then, the picture of the mom's hands that they used was tatted up. Like, I'm not sure that that's really representative of the soccer mom demographic that regulated. Yeah, those are not your hands, dear, but I will teach you anatomy at another date and time. So there's that. But and so I'm not sure that is the soccer mom. But I also think that while moms could be a great litmus test for the normalization of cannabis in society outside of the sort of subcultures that have traditionally used cannabis, that the influence of the soccer mom on regulated cannabis has been overhyped and underdelivered in general. So I think we look at things like some of these little micro mints and the Dose It pen and things like that, where everybody felt like the soccer mom was, the most desirable customer to have. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to say anything disparaging right after Mother's Day, but I don't know that is that they've really had the influence on the CPG regulated market as much as people had thought. And I also do think that if you're going to market with a product, if you niche yourself into only appealing to that demographic, that would not be a very wise business move.
Well, okay. So I hear you, Yarrow. I understand where you're coming from. But also, you were married for a very long time. Who did the shopping in your household for the most portion?
You already know the answer.
Right.
See,
So,
that's why you asked the question.
honey, I need X, Y, and Z from the store. The wife is going and doing the shopping in a large part of American households, right? So appealing to that demographic is a very wise marketing move, right? Because at the end of the day, the husband might not want the cute little packaging, but the wife is going to like it, and that's what the husband's going to get. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to open that little purple jar up, and he's going to smoke that weed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't get mad at me, Yarrow.
But here's the thing.
I mean, look, there's things like wine, alcohol, coffee. There are certain things where over the 18 years married and 20 years together, those decisions were never hers. She might actually be the one to pick them up, but I was making those choices. So I think when it comes to the mayonnaise in the refrigerator, I have a lot less preferences than
always
than
Dukes.
cannabis.
Always Dukes. Go with Dukes mayonnaise.
I don't know. My son tells me these days it's something with avocado oil in it or something. I don't know. But the point
He wants
is,
your cholesterol to be okay.
I think that not all CPG products carry with them the same level of input or preference from the non-purchasing person in a relationship. And I think with cannabis, I think we see more of that. I don't know if you're going to use that analogy, Jenny. Like, would Heather have ever said like, "Oh, I just picked you up a 6-pack of beer"? She would ask me, "What kind of beer would you like?"
Yeah. Well,
But if it came to grapes, no, I had no say in what grapes ended up in the refrigerator.
I hope
Cotton
there was cotton
candy,
candy.
white, red, didn't matter. I have no say.
I would have bought you cotton candy and we'd still be married, Yara. But anyway, okay, I hear you. But I mean, if you're saying I want an OG vape, right? Is she going to pick you one that she thinks is cute, or is she just going to grab? Like, are you going to get that granular with it that you're like, I would like a Stizzy, 1 gram, OG vape?
Well,
Yeah,
here's the
I mean, it's hard for me to reference my personal experience being in the space. I probably have a different experience than the husband that wasn't in the space. So usually I brought home the goods.
Yeah, you know, I was gonna bring that up. You know, most you know, because of cannabis's stigma amongst populations and whatnot, it's kind of perceived as more of a guy thing to go buy. You know what I mean? Like kind of more like going to the hardware store as opposed to the grocery store. And so,
well, I mean, we're falling into these gender norms, and you know, I'm sure we're offending somebody out there.
that's fine. I'm here to offend everybody.
Sure. But you know, the pickiest people I've ever seen when it comes to cannabis, the pickiest cannabis user I've ever met is my father.
See, a guy.
He's a sativa diva.
See, it's a guy. That's my whole point. That's my whole point, and that exactly is my point. Is I think a majority of the customers still with cannabis and whatnot is still overall guys, because it's still kind of more of a guy thing to do. And every woman in the world loves when a man brings her flowers. Just
We
saying.
have a super chat, Jason.
Yes, we did have a super chat. You are so right about that, Jenny Beth. And shout out to the C Word, who says, how many of you are celebrating 2025 as the year of the bong load?
You know that was a thing.
Yeah, apparently it is. Apparently it
Every year
apparently
is
it
the year of
is.
the bong load. Are you kidding?
If today's like Frog Jump Day, I'm gonna go with that and say 2025 is the year of the bong load.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With more and more moms using cannabis on the regular, you know, a lot of them are saying it makes them better parents, right?
That's true.
They have increased patience and, you know, improved presence and engagement. Right? It helps their stress and anxiety, and it makes them more creative and playful. So, it's like having a glass of wine to most of these moms.
That's right.
Yeah. And in Florida, you know, you guys were talking about packaging and what people are going to buy. It doesn't exist in Florida. It's all in a white, opaque container. You know, you're not looking at packaging. You're not saying, I want the pretty one versus this. So there's no real marketing for people here in that aspect regarding to kind of try to promote towards a certain brand, except the people who promote a little bit on social media and stuff, but it's very absent. So, and I don't know what the demographics are on, you know, the soccer moms purchasing cannabis here in the state, But I think exactly what Todd was saying is that they're doing it because it relaxes them, stress out the day, better deal with the chaos of the kids running around like with their, crazy and stuff. So I think it's very interesting in different states how it's going to play out differently with that desire to use.
Yeah, very, very true. And on that, I'm going to roll into my story. I hope you guys are ready for this, you guys, because the Texas House, they signal expanding the state's medical marijuana program today, you guys. That's right. House Bill 46 would increase the number of health conditions eligible and would offer smokable products under the state's medical marijuana program. Finally, some good news for Texas. The Texas House advanced a bill on Monday that would expand the conditions eligible for the state's medical marijuana program, including chronic pain and Crohn's disease, and allow for prescribed smokable products to be sold by prescription. House Bill 46 by Representative Ken King, Republican from Canadian, would allow patients in the state's medical marijuana program to use products like cannabis patches, lotions, and prescribed inhalers and vaping devices. The House preliminary approved the bill, the House preliminary approved the bill 118-16 on Monday and will need a final round of approval before it heads to the Senate. If it becomes law, the list of qualifying conditions would also expand to include chronic pain, traumatic brain injury, Crohn's disease, and degenerative disc disease. The bill would also let licensed dispensaries open more satellite locations, which supporters say is necessary to prevent the industry from crumbling. In a quote, "There are too many Texans who are still struggling to get access to the medicine they legally have a right to receive," King said, pointing out his bill would allow for additional dispensing locations outside of Central Texas, where all dispensaries are currently concentrated. Representative Penny Morales Shaw, a Democrat from Houston, said rural Texans would have more access. In a quote, she says, "Too many of our fellow Texans are forced to either suffer or self-medicate because they don't have sufficient access. And this is an amazing alternative to addictive, harmful opioids, which we know is a huge problem," she said. In Texas, licensed medical cannabis providers must house all operations, including cannabis cultivation, processing, extracting, manufacturing, testing, and dispensing under one roof. And state regulations also prohibit inventory storage of medical cannabis products in multiple locations. So products must be distributed from the central dispensary, and any prescriptions scheduled for pickup outside the central dispensary must be driven daily to and from the pickup location, sometimes thousands of miles round trip. In a quote, they say, "This method puts wear and tear on our vehicles, limits the amount of time we can spend with patients, and can compromise product integrity," said Terrence Bow, marketing manager for Good Blend, Austin-based medical marijuana producer. In a quote, he says, "We might drive 200 miles, and the person we are delivering to might not even be there at that moment." This has made the products more expensive and limited where the medical marijuana program can reach, and hampering the small medical cannabis market in Texas. In a quote, they say, "We also don't have enough doctors in the program and not enough people prescribing it. For most patients to find us through a doctor, we are dealing with several different challenges, but we are hopeful these bills might help," said Baugh. House Bill 46 is meant to correct some of this problem by allowing medical marijuana distributors to store their products in various satellite locations instead of having to drive across the state to return the product every day. And however, the most significant potential change would be allowing smokable marijuana products, such as vapes, to be introduced into the program, helping to match the popularity of products found in the hemp industry. The Texas medical program can currently only sell gummies, lozenges, topicals, beverages, and tinctures, as smoking or vaping products have not been approved. And many hemp products, which are unregulated and sold more freely in smoke shops, also give the same high as medical marijuana, but are cheaper for consumers and don't require a visit to the medical professional for approval to purchase. The ease of access has pretty much made the medical marijuana program irrelevant, according to the medical marijuana industry. And Dylan Dablesut, senior manager of cultivation at Good Blend, said the only difference between hemp and medical marijuana is that hemp is harvested earlier. I don't know about all that, but whatever. In a quote, he says, "Hemp is just a little more flexible while marijuana is produced for high THC alone," he said. By allowing smokables and expanding the conditions, the medical marijuana producers are hoping this will open up the market to more patients and increase demand for products. And Texas lawmakers are also determining the future of hemp this session, as the House panel approved last month a bill also authored by King to tighten up regulations on Texas consumable hemp industry, setting up a potential clash with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and the Senate, who are pursuing a total ban on THC products. And in a quote, they say, "I think we can coexist with hemp. We just want an even playing field," said Baugh. "I believe additional regulations are needed on hemp, and we need to loosen some on medical marijuana." King noted on Monday that HB 46 would have no effect on the hemp and that the future of the industry would be decided another day. "The other bill will be coming to the House floor near you," he told lawmakers in a quote. Well, Texas. It looks like they could be expanding the medical program out there, and I know this is great for patients. I know Leah Patrick in our audience is probably still going to be excited about this because there'd be smokable products, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, I would first like to just go in on the fact that it's very, very clear that Texas doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. The only difference is hemp is harvested sooner. Okay, cool. So genetics have nothing to do with it, right?
He doesn't speak for the state. He speaks for their company, first of all, just to be clear.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love that. And they run a cannabis company, correct? Or a hemp company?
They have a medical cannabis company in the great state of Texas in the Austin area.
Yeah, well, they fucking shouldn't, because they clearly don't understand the product that they're selling. So, hey, Green Rusher, how are you doing? It just is always really frustrating to me. And like, we've dealt with this for a very long time. And this is why we have consumers who are so like vehemently just tied to these beliefs that they've been indoctrinated with because they heard it from the companies that sell them products.
Yeah.
And those companies that sell them products don't know what the actual fuck they're talking about.
I agree with that.
It's so frustrating to try and correct someone and actually teach them, because they're downright fucking rude about in defense of their incorrect positions. So like, please, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know what you're saying, if you don't actually have anything helpful to say, sometimes it's okay to just shut the fuck up.
Fair enough. And Brian Dombrowski in the chat.
Advice.
Brian Dombrowski in the chat, he says, SB3, as now written, takes vapes away from the hemp industry and gives it to the TCUP program. Interesting. Very, very interesting.
I mean, I'd like to say some disparaging things, but before I do, I just want to say, Texas, I love your brisket. This is not an attack on the state or all the residents of the state. Your brisket is my love language. So I'm all for the Lone Star State. The problem is that this modification, and I don't have as many details as Brian Dombrowski likely has now that he is living in Texas, not California. But the problem is that their medical program has been really, really poor for a very long time. And so improvements to that program don't really get like a big rah-rah out of me, because they're not even bringing them up to what we see in other states. Like, oh, great, now you're adding this. Oh, great, now you're adding this. Oh, great, now you can qualify if you have Crohn's disease. I mean, it's like, these are really incremental changes. They're big changes for patients in Texas. And I don't want to act like that's not important. But I think we need to be really, really unsatisfied with those changes. They're not enough, and they're not quick enough. If it does prevent a lack of vape cartridges that are hemp, like Brian has suggested, well, then hemp's going to need to be more regulated when it comes to supply chain and quality assurances before people are putting things in their lungs or putting in cannabinoids that are created through secondary processes and not just from mother liquor, not just naturally derived. So there's that. And so I think there's actually some rationale behind saying, wait a second, if this didn't just go through a type 6 or type 7, but was a secondary process, do we know what's in there? Is it been tested? There's an argument that needs, on the hemp side, might need to slow down a little bit, or that the industry needs to establish self-governing standards that the government can just come in and rubber stamp and say, okay, you guys got this, great, carry on. The thing is that medical patients in Texas haven't been really treated like medical patients. They can say they have a medical program, but the limited number of places people can get that medicine in Texas is an insult to the idea that they have had a functional medical program. So it's great that they're adding some things in terms of form factors. It's great that they're adding some qualifying conditions. It's not so great that they continue to be decades behind the status quo in many other states that have a medical market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, someone from Florida that, we started the same way. When we first passed our medical in the state, it was only vapes and concentrates and tinctures and oils, no smokable flower. And so we had to do lawsuits in order to open it up. So it's the continued pattern of a state that passes something kind of because probably the public wants it, but they don't really, the legislature doesn't really want to do it. So they continue to put additional hurdles in to kind of prevent it from happening. And they're really just, from my perspective, violating our constitutional rights under the Declaration of Independence, that we should all be entitled to anything that has been created and given to us by our maker, and able to use any of these medicines, these healthy plant medicines, in their natural form. And Texas has got to get on board. I feel bad for those patients that have to continue to go to the black market or suffer, with other medications, or even people on chemotherapy or an end-of-life stage and dying with cancer, not being able to smoke a joint to be able to relieve some of that pain instantly, and to kind of ease their pain and end-of-life suffering. It's just sad that people are so behind and so entrenched in their brainwashed thoughts about cannabis being the devil's weed. Patients wouldn't want to use it if it was harmful to them. Do they not understand that?
Right?
Well, and I think Leah Patrick hit the nail on the head. I mean, if there's no home grow provision in Texas under medical, then you don't really have a medical program. If you can't grow a plant in your backyard, make it into some Rick Simpson oil with a $12 rice steamer you can get off of Amazon, then are we really prioritizing patients?
Well, I'm in Florida, so
good news is they don't have to give up their guns because patients are allowed to keep firearms in Texas.
Yep. And I guess we're going to have to start a campaign for Texas that is make Phototrons great again.
Yeah, that's my old company.
See what I'm saying? Look at that. Look at that. And on that,
I mean, Texas has this weird, twisted version of personal liberties on certain issues. They are arguably the most restrictive state in the nation, and you guys have heard me rail about that a lot, and not just about cannabis. And then on other things, they seem fiercely independent and committed to people's autonomy and ability to make their own decisions and carve their own path in this world. And it's hard to understand how all of that coexists semi-coherently in the culture that makes up their legislative branch. I do not get it. I don't get it.
It's religion that steers that state. Come on.
As you know, our governor kept us open during COVID, was one of the most outspoken people about it, and about freedom and about freedom rights and protection of your own rights and individual liberties, but was against the abortion bill, and then was vehemently against cannabis. So the two of us are mirrors, Florida and Texas. We got a little bit more hope because we had ballot initiatives in this state, which are probably pretty much over. So
fair enough. And on that,
DeSantis didn't want it because he thought that the smell of marijuana would deteriorate the way of life for Floridians.
Oh man,
yeah,
man. And on that, we're gonna roll into our next commercial, and we're gonna be right back.
Todd's mean to me now because he likes Todd.
Yes. And stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash the like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it. And YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.high9news.com. And make sure you go into the description of this video and use the link to order yourself a can of Liberal Tears, the perfect energy drink. No sugar. No, you know what I'm saying, 150 milligrams of caffeine.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, Todd. And on top of it, there is no snowflakes allowed either. I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that, they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, yes. And we are back, you guys.
Coming up next, the founder of DigiPath Labs and the Smuggleverse. He was the silver voice earlier in the show, but now we've got him fixed. The golden voice, Todd Denkin.
Oh, and the crowd goes wild. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. And sorry about the earlier tinny sound, but it should be all fixed. My story is in the testing space because Arizona marijuana regulators flag a major testing lab for multiple violations. That's right, a prominent national marijuana testing lab is in hot water. State regulators in Arizona who have found fault with the lab's ability to detect contaminants and flag derived THC, according to public records. Following an annual inspection in March, the Arizona Department of Health Services on April 24th informed Acacia Labs of more than a dozen alleged deficiencies, including problems with the lab's potency testing and pesticide and microbial detection methods. It is the latest example of regulators taking action against a cannabis testing lab, potential failures to detect contaminants and produce reliable potency results after years of complaints, questionable lab results from across the industry. California regulators in April suspended at least 2 labs from operating, the latest in a crackdown that began last year. That enforcement comes amid claims from operators in states such as Colorado and New York. Unscrupulous parties are introducing hemp-derived THC oil produced outside regulated channels to the legal cannabis supply, an example of the practice known as inversion. Acacia Labs, which holds licenses to test cannabis in 7 states, might face separate, as yet unknown, quote, civil monetary penalties, unquote, the alleged violations in Arizona. That's according to the April 24th notice signed by Mary Graham, who leads the Arizona Bureau of State Laboratory Services Certification and Licensing Office. This is at least the 3rd time Arizona regulators have found fault with Acacia Labs. Several alleged violations noted by Arizona's Department of Health Services. Its April 24th report of findings were, quote, double repeat findings, unquote, also cited by the agency during inspections in 2023 and 2024, according to Graham's notice. The DHS notice gives Acacia 30 days to respond. The company did not immediately respond to MJ Daly's request for comment. I also reached out to the lab director at Acacia in Arizona, who is a friend of mine, and also had no comment. Graham directed MJ Biz Daily inquiries to a DHS spokesperson who did not immediately respond. The lab appeared to remain in operation as of Friday, and there have been no public notices of product recalls, nor was it immediately clear how much product currently for sale on Arizona marijuana store shelves is potentially affected. According to Graham's notice, Arizona DHS found that Keisha Labs kept incomplete or inconsistent records for the collection and transportation of samples, reported results in the wrong units of measure, meaning the lab could not ensure that certificates of authenticity it issued contained the actual scientifically valid and defensible results. Used a visiting potency analyst, did not complete the required step before running THC potency tests. They reran potency sampling, quote, per client request without a scientifically valid reason to do so, unquote, and used a separate method file from other samples to process the unidentified client's product. Those retests were highest high. Not ensure the testing equipment could properly differentiate between Delta 9 and Delta 8 THC when determining total THC. They used a limit of quantification in lab tests for pesticides and mold that was, quote, 25 times higher than the maximum allowable concentration under state law. They also did not maintain a log for all samples that detected for Aspergillus and Salmonella, used a dilution factor for detecting pesticides that would have allowed tainted product to pass testing and be sold, and they reran potency tests mixed to 8 and Delta 9 THC, allegedly. Josh Swider, the co-founder of San Diego-based Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs and a frequent critic of allegedly nefarious labs, told MJ Biz Daily that the allegations are, quote, extremely concerning for public health. Also raised questions about the safety of cannabis tested in Arizona and in other states, he said. Continued saying, it concerns me that this is a multi-state operator. The mistakes being done at this laboratory, it would bring into question every other laboratory run by this company. Arizona regulators have taken action against allegedly unscrupulous labs before. 2022, the state fined On Point Labs nearly $500,000 for allegedly deliberate actions that threaten public safety. Records indicate that Keisha is one of 11 testing labs licensed in Arizona to test cannabis for sale. Dimitri Downing, the founder and CEO of Arizona's Marijuana Industry Trade Association, known as MITA, told MJ Biz Daily that unlike retail and cultivation permits, which are capped by the state, the number of available lab permits is uncapped. That results in a, quote, very competitive situation where the labs have to fight, quote, for customers, he said. Then you have a situation where people get kickbacks, people get false reports, people have friends start a lab and get them favorable results added. These things have been happening in the Arizona market, he put. This is a state of affairs that even Keisha has admitted to. In 2022 blog post on its website, the company emphasized the need to, quote, bring blatant testing corruption to an end, but without holding cannabis firms accountable for their products. The market suffers further deterioration, becomes a cesspool of bad behavior. Interesting that was their quote on their website. I'm Todd Denkin with High at 9 News. So Keisha Labs keeping inconsistent records, falsifying reports, untrained technicians, not following mandated regulations, and a whole lot more. Should the penalty be for a lab that loses public faith in the industry? What do you guys think?
I never realized that anyone had faith in these labs in the first place.
Hey.
I'm just saying. Everyone knows THC is a joke.
Todd, I know
it's the dispensaries that we question.
As you proudly wear your DigiPath Lab shirt, and I'm sure DigiPath is science matters there, I hear. But unfortunately, I love that was your friend and they had no comment, because how do you get 7 or 8 fucking of the same infractions and you're still allowed to open your doors and put product in through your facility? I know that's your friend, but maybe you should call them and teach them what science is, because this is not acceptable. And then you're looking at Bel Costa, who, they fucked up. They fucked up a few different things. Some of the things they fucked up were very easy things not to fuck up, but their license has gone after the first fuck up. These guys are just out here willy-nilly, again. All right, Britney Spears of the lab testing space. Guys, shut them down, Arizona.
Britney Spears.
Yeah, we had a lab in
testing
Arizona
space
for a minute, and the DHS is not have very strange rules as they enforce what they choose to enforce.
Mm-hmm.
That's been our experience, and we since closed that lab over there just because the industry over there is just mess, and there's more proof that it is quite messy.
I mean, I think the states are kind of caught themselves in a conundrum by mandating all this testing, and then just not having enough labs to where they can actually shut them down without causing major gluts in the supply chain, which ultimately affects their tax revenue. So I think that's probably the biggest problem that we have in the testing space.
Yeah,
there's too many rules in testing, is what you're saying?
No, there's not enough testing labs. There's not enough fair market competition in there.
There's plenty of testing labs. They're available. They're out there. There's plenty of them.
I know that there's not a lot in Florida necessarily, especially for the MMTCs. Kacha Labs, I will say I've known them from the beginning. They are originally a Florida company. And shout out to Dimitri, also a good friend, great person in Arizona.
Yeah.
But, I think with this lab issue, I think the biggest issue is there's no standards across the testing labs, not on a national level, not on a state level, even here in the state of Florida, and especially regarding the Delta 8 issue, right? With regards to hemp, that becomes a big problem. You can shop around which labs does test Delta 8 better, and the hemp companies know that. I know in one of the cases that we had, there was a lab out of Kentucky that seemed to convert most of the Delta 8 into Delta 9. So their Delta 8 testing results were totally different than the labs that they were getting the product from, right? And so the companies learn which lab to send which product to get the results that they need for that product. So I really think it comes down to standardized testing and standardized regulations related to these things. We looked at a report. We had a lab here in the state that got sanctioned for something, and literally with the testing results on that, they blamed it on them putting the number in the wrong decimal space, right? So you get a total different testing result than not. So I think sometimes we have to look into this. Is there bad actors? Is this a Scribner's error mistake? Or are these people intentionally, inflating numbers and stuff like that? And Jason, and I don't know how long you guys have been involved in the industry, but it seems like a while. This has been an issue since the beginning. I remember the old days when Oregon started and stuff. There was all that issues of them inflating THC levels and things of that nature. And now we know, as Jason says, it's really THCA. It's not even the high concentrations of Delta 9 in most of these plants that we've been kind of misled to believe forever. So that education and the standardized testing, again, the FDA has to get off their ass and finally do what they're supposed to do in the Farm Bill and regulate this industry in that arena.
I agree. Standardization is key. Not only is it different from state to state, but it's different lab to lab, right? Everyone uses an HPLC, but there's 6 different brands of HPLCs, right? There's 5 different brands of standards that are sold, right? So we don't even all use the same standard to qualify the machine, right? So I'm all for standards. Standards would be great. It levels the playing field. Everyone's doing the same thing, and it eliminates the bad actors.
Fair.
Yarrow, you look like you have something to say.
Oh, or you're constipated.
Yeah, both.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, maintaining a state of constipation is the only way I can be on parity with my cohorts here who are constantly full of shit. So,
oh boy.
That said, I do think that it is that standards are important. What I was thinking about is that standards are really like the minimum that keeps people together. It's the mortar between the bricks. And I was reflecting to myself, deep in premeditative thought without psychedelics, that Todd's article today is about standards. And so is my article today about standards. And I think standards, when they're developed in conjunction with the industry, or when the industry is developing them and then offering them up to regulators as prudent, they're not a bad thing. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. And in California, they're talking about why is lab testing even being carved out as something that has to happen in the cannabis industry versus all the lab testing that's already happening for agriculture anyway. And does it make sense to stand up to duplicative infrastructure, more regulation, more supply chain issues? So I think if we want to have parity as an industry, we really don't want to see ourselves as so terminally unique that we have to do everything all over again. So I like standards. I think standards are healthy. And I think at the end of the day, everybody wins. If the standards make sense.
Well, should there be standards in how to grow? To be like you have to do it a certain way?
No.
We want to leave that one alone.
No, but if we're talking about pesticides and things like that and products that you use to cultivate, absolutely there should be.
I think there's standards about what you don't do.
Right. Right.
But Michael, what you're saying is that yeah, those are testing rules, right?
Yep. Yeah, a combination of both, exactly. You know,
I mean, well, while we have Yarrow off the shelf, let's keep him off. Let's go ahead and send it out to the Sebastopol.
Hold on 1 second, Jenny Beth. I made a comment in the chat. I wanted to read my comment in the chat real quick, and then you can go into Yarrow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I put
made a comment.
Yeah, I made a
Can't do that.
Thank you,
Can't
Ben.
do that.
Yeah.
What is it?
I used to test all my weed by smoking it. That always worked the best for testing. Every other method is bullshit.
All right, Jason. Well, I'm very glad that we stopped the show for that one.
Thank you, Jenny. Go ahead, proceed.
We had to get that out of there, you know what I mean?
Well, we're supposed to go to our final commercial first, Jenny. So we're going to do that, and then you can introduce Yarrow.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Chat.
Oh, cool.
Yes. Oh, yes, and we're back. Go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, now I can do it? Okay.
Yeah. Now
Did you have another one of your chats in the you made fun you wanted to read? Okay, go ahead.
No.
All right. So the Sebastopol saying the angriest elf at the high and 9 shelf. Although he's pretty jovial right now, and I kind of love that for him. No, he is not Jason Beck's twin, and he might be a half-inch taller. Yarrow Kubrin guy.
Thank you, Jenny. I love the hat on you, and I love being here on High at 9 News Tuesday morning. Love the chat. Can't type and talk and think always at the same time. It's Steve Lassingham, Frogtown. That's Angels Camp. That's Calaveras County. That is the longest continuing running frog jumping contest that I'm aware of in California, starting back in 1928. I knew that because I once threw a rave at that venue, and I was always wondering why it was called Frogtown. So back to frog jumping. So my article today, no connection. My article today is about standards. And so I really appreciated Todd's article about the lack of standards. This is a really long article. I'm probably going to read as fast as I possibly caffeinatively can. And I'm probably going to drop out the last 3 paragraphs because this thing is a book and I don't want to put y'all to sleep. So hot off the press. Today, cannabis industry should develop more consistent drying methods, federal science agency said. A new report from a federal science agency examines moisture and drying standards in the hemp part of an ongoing project to help laboratories ensure accuracy and precision when testing cannabis products. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, published a report late last month finding considerable variation in moisture levels from facilities that use different approaches to drying. The agency said the results indicate the need for consistent hemp drying methods for accurate and precise measurement. The 29-page paper is the latest in NIST's so-called Cannabis Laboratory Quality Assurance Program, CannaQuap, launched in 2020. The program's most recent prior report, published last year, focused on determining cannabinoid content in plant material samples following early reports on moisture content and certain toxins and heavy metals. The program, created after the 2018 Farm Bill's federal legalization of hemp, is split into 3 exercises. The first centered on measuring the concentration of up to 17 different cannabinoids in hemp oil. NIST published a report on that in mid-2021. Exercise 2, completed last year, looked at testing of dried cannabis plant samples rather than hemp oil. In addition to cannabinoid testing, it expanded the scope of the exercise to include testing for moisture content, as well as 13 toxic elements. The new paper is the first portion of Exercise 3 of CannaQuap. In addition to the latest report on moisture in cannabis, Exercise 3 will also include additional forthcoming reports on testing for cannabinoids and toxic elements. A NIST representative told Marijuana Moment that the final 2 reports could be published by the end of the year, the more likely sometime in 2026. Findings on the new report come from an exercise in which 89 participant laboratories were provided with plant sample and asked to assess its moisture level. Overall, just 20% of the participants reported moisture levels within NIST's target range, the study says. On average, the mean moisture level was approximately 2% above the agency's target. The labs used a variety of analysis methods, the paper notes, but the majority of laboratories with mean moisture values within the target range used a thermogravimetric analysis or selected other as their method option. Other was in fact the most common method listed by laboratories, with 29 saying they used an unlisted form of analysis. Thermogravimetric analysis was second most common, with 28 labs using that method. In general, systematic and random errors were the cause of the majority of inaccurate or less precise results. The authors wrote the errors are most likely the results of inappropriate sample storage and or weighing inconsistencies. A sample in a crucible can take on moisture after leaving the oven, desiccator, or freeze dryer. They noted it is essential to store the crucibles containing the samples in a desiccator after they are removed from the drying apparatus. It is equally important to start with a crucible that has been adequately dried and stored in a desiccator prior to use. The crucible and sample should be weighed when the sample and the crucible are at ambient temperature. Otherwise, buoyancy errors will result in an incorrect final sample mass. Walter Brent Wilson, a research chemist at NIST, who co-authored the new moisture report as well as the CannaQuap report, explained the purpose of testing for cannabinoids, contaminants, and moisture in comments to Marijuana Moment last year. Since cannabinoids are increasingly used in over-the-counter supplements, they were included again in this exercise for participants to continue to evaluate their in-house analytical methods in dried hemp plant material. So I'm going to have to summarize this because we got a lot more of this article that I can't talk. Come on, Lie at 9 News. God. Because this article goes on and on and on and on and on and on. But I did want to talk about this because flower is something near and dear. University of Mississippi is in here again. Okay, you guys were complaining about them getting 143,000 with Doji Dodgy, but we won't go into that any further. So, so I want to talk a little bit about this because I do believe that standards are important. But I think standards should be more about what people don't do than what they do. And here's the reason why I think about that when it comes to curing cannabis flower. I believe that when people are smoking flower, the curing process is a bit of an art, a bit of a personal expression for the cultivation team, a bit of a methodology that shouldn't have to be shared with everybody, and that the skill involved in curing really impacts the consumer's experience with that flower. And that it's not just the genetics, it's not just your growing methodology, it's not just this, that, and the other. It really has a lot to do with the cure. I would hate for people to all have to cure the same way because the standard was foisted upon them merely to meet a certain humidity range. And I think that we should look at standards as what you're not allowed to do, those things that are damaging or those things that don't create consistency and results when it comes to testing for contaminants. But I would not want the government to tell me how to cure my weed. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News.
I totally agree with that, Yarrow. I would not want the government to tell me how to cure my weed, and especially when drying and curing weed is like 80 to 90% of actually having quality cannabis in the first place. I mean, that's
the most important part.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. Like, you know, you can grow it and it can look so great on the stem and be so good and but as soon as you chop it down and dry it, it's the easiest way to turn your grade A into hay.
No, 100%.
that, hey,
Oh, and
hey,
everyone's
hey.
in a rush these days. Nobody wants to take the 10 days, the 12 days, the 14 days it really takes to really dry and cure.
Here's the thing: it takes 7 to 10 days for acids to turn to sugars. So you can't rush that process at all whatsoever. That's just nature, and so that's just is what it is. And anyone that doesn't understand that just doesn't understand chemistry or horticulture or anything else like that, and they need to step their game up.
And notice in this article, they're talking about cannabinoids and contaminants.
Mm-hmm.
They are not talking about terpenes.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're talking about curing hemp or cannabis and there's no conversation or measuring of terpenes, they're not going to be able to create standards that prioritize terpene preservation,
Mm-hmm.
which in my opinion is probably one of the most important outcomes of a good curing process.
Mm-hmm.
Terps are very volatile, so they disappear and they go away. And if they're in the wrong climates,
they're like angry elves on shelves. You just never know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just
that one always
a fun
comes back
fact for everybody. I've been in the testing business for about 10 years, and we're about 150, 160,000 samples in, and we've had many fails for aspergillus. We've had many fails for pesticides, and we've had like 3 fails moisture,
Mm-hmm.
right, over all of that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh God, sorry.
I was just going to say, people are curing and they are testing. A lot of these cultivators have their own moisture analysis device,
Mm-hmm.
so they can make sure that they're hitting the just under 15%.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a legal perspective, in looking at this, right, we've had a few calls related, and I think on the moisture side, the potential impact is this, right? When you go and buy a beer, you're getting a 12-ounce beer, you're getting 12 ounces of liquor in it, right? So what we're seeing happening, we've gotten a good amount of complaints from, and it's just the matter of trying to figure out how to potentially challenge that, is people get home with their weed, and they take it out of the packaging and they weigh it, and it's not 3.5 grams, it's 3.2 grams. Or it's not 7 grams, it's 5 grams. And so I think really that's where potentially this moisture content thing and the curing process really is going to have a huge impact. We have decided not to take a case on that, but in the beer industry or in your packaging industry, there's a potential lawsuit on that. It's fraudulent in packaging if you're saying the product has 3.5 grams and it doesn't. So there's a lot of potential implications for the industry in and of itself as it continues to legitimize, if people are going to figure out a way to challenge these things. And I think that's the biggest reason why there needs to be some sort of standard that makes sure that when they package it, it's going to be the same weight when it's opened and purchased by the consumer, whether or not it be a week or a month or however long that product can be on the shelf for.
But Michael, you just made the perfect argument for removing all packaging requirements, and going back to traditional deli style type of serving. So then that way the patient is actually getting the full allotment that they're paying for. You know what I mean? You just you make sure that you have a certified scale, by the departments of weights and measures and everything else like that. That just makes way more sense to me. And then these companies, they can provide their packaging for their little jars or their bags or whatever they want, or you know what I mean? Or in Florida, they probably wouldn't even need that because everything's pretty much in an opaque white bag, and so it'd be a lot easier. But
Well, Jason, this is why when we package cannabis in a CPG standard, right, we throw that one little extra nug in there to account for any moisture loss and scale variance.
Yeah, well,
It's called being a friendly neighborhood drug dealer, right?
Well, I was just going to say we could learn a lot from the boys and girls in the mountains, right? Because mountain pounds were always weighed much, much over. And
no, they were not weighed over. They were actually weighed correctly. It's just people in the cannabis space, just drug dealers don't do math well because they add 28 times 16 to get 448, when if they actually were smart and did actual conversion of grams to pounds, they'd get 454.
Yeah, a mountain pound is like it's like a baker's dozen, Jason.
Yeah, it usually has
I don't
8
believe
to
that.
12 over because things lose moisture, and so if we weren't being taxed to high heaven, I think cultivators would be totally fine with tossing a few more in there and accounting for moisture loss that way.
That's true.
The problem is tracking all of that shit in metric, right? You can't track an extra 8 grams or
Sure, you can. You measure it in grams. You put it in there in grams instead of pounds. You absolutely can.
You have your scale tied to the metric.
64 gram pounds.
Totally fine. Put it in there as grams instead of pounds. If you need to track that little variance.
Yep. Easy peasy. Look at that. Solutions for you, Todd. Easy. Solutions. We're here bringing them.
You got questions? I got metric answers. Let's go.
Yep. Weed for the people, you guys. Weed for the people.
And on that note,
not just weed for the people, but high terpene percentages for the people. And how do we get to a place where regulated cannabis can prioritize the entire experience that people have when they open up a bag of flower? They breathe deeply, they smell it, smells trigger memories, they enjoy that walk down memory lane, they roll whatever it is they're going to use. And like, we really need to think about this and how we prioritize the best genetic expression and getting that from the farm to the customer with the least amount of interference and the least amount of adulteration.
I actually like, Jason, the deli idea of, weighing out your weed when you get to the store. Issue becomes cleanliness, right? And, the product has already passed a safety test. Now, 10 people touch it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You use the tongs, you use the gloves, whatever the health department institutes as the standard for all of that. It's really not that difficult.
The gloves are used to protect your hands, not to protect the pot.
I grabbed weed with my fingertips for decades upon decades, bro, and no one ever had a problem. So, and I was serving sick people, okay? And now serving the general public, all of a sudden everyone, whoa. Nah, that's just totally ridiculous.
Right, are we going to treat
I did back, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years ago, actually before Nevada was legal, TNM News, we did an investigative report where we took hidden cameras into dispensaries and ordered weed to see who was right, who was wrong, who was doing whatever, right? So of the ones that, I'll send you the video if you want to watch it.
Yeah.
But it was pretty interesting. But everybody who was handling the weed had gloves on. They would do this, and they did all of that stuff while they're handling weed. So definitely needs, the proper SOPs.
The people take a food prepreration class. They could be just
facilitate the deli style for sure.
The only employee back in the day that I ever had wear gloves was because he was trying to get his he was trying to get custody of his kid back, and so he was having to get drug tested in order to get custody of his kid back. And just from touching the weed, he was testing positive on his drug test. And so, but they were like super low levels, but it was enough to trigger a positive on his urinalysis. And so then we started having him wear gloves, and that dropped it. You know what I'm saying? It still was there a little bit, but a lot less than what it was prior. And ultimately he got custody of his kid back at one point.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Gloves protect your hands, not the weed.
Right, Michael. What were you trying to say? Go ahead.
If Subway can do it, are you telling me we can't do it with weed?
Exactly.
I mean, come on, it just doesn't make any sense. And
I agree.
So that means the food that they leave out open, that you walk in there, is basically contaminated. And I know our food safety isn't the best in this country, but
it's not.
I mean, I think we can do it with weed.
What about a buffet, Michael? What about Sizzler?
Sizzler,
you know what I mean? Was it Cracker Barrel?
I don't have a lot of time.
All those places, you know what I mean?
Talking about the same general population that's sticking their fucking fingers in their fruit under the chocolate fountain at the fucking Golden Corral. So I guess, whatever, just run it.
Exactly. Yarrow, you got any final thoughts on this? It looks like you're trying to say something. You're squinting.
I'm trying not to laugh at the image that Jenny just painted for us.
All right, well, fine. All right, fair enough. I'm gonna roll into
I'm not sticking my fingers in the fruit under the chocolate fountain.
Oh boy.
Maybe above the chocolate fountain.
Your fingers? That's
another fruit under the chocolate fountain.
Oh boy, always sticking.
No, it is National Fruit Salad Day.
Bringing the end up of the show. Here comes the highest host of the High at 9 News. The highest host is Adam Mill. Sorry, Adam. Jason Beck.
I'm the highest Republican, Jenny Beth. Don't forget
that
it.
one.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, it's okay. Let me tell you something, man. DC, unlicensed cannabis storefronts fall as DC closes 2 more shops, you guys. That's right. Officials padlocked 2 H Street shops citing illegal cannabis sales under DC's emergency law. Nearly 100,000 grams of vapes were recovered from the one location, you guys. The district's campaign to shut down unlicensed cannabis operations reached a new milestone this week with the closure of 2 more storefronts on H Street Northeast. The latest actions bring the total number of padlocked shops to 53 since emergency legislation granted city officials new enforcement powers in mid-2024. On May 8th, the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration, the ABCA, with support from the Metropolitan Police Department, Violent Crime Suppression Division, served closure orders at Pot Paradise at 521 H Street Northeast and H & Vape Smoke Shop at 1374 H Street Northeast. Officials cited both businesses for operating without the required cannabis retail license and a violation of DC Code 7-1671.06, which governs legal cannabis sales in the district. According to the ACBA, the closures were carried out under the authority of the Medical Cannabis Conditional License and Unlicensed Establishment Closure Clarification Emergency Amendment Act of 2024, which went into effect on July 15th of 2024. The law permits the agency to padlock storefronts, posing an imminent danger to public health and safety without needing a prior hearing. While executing the closure orders, MPD officers observed what they described as illegal cannabis products at both locations, and search warrants were then obtained and executed on site. At Pot Paradise, investigators seized nearly 1 pound of marijuana, more than 3/4 of a pound of THC-infused edibles, and a pound of mushroom edibles, and more than 90,000 grams of THC vape products. At the H & Vape Smoke Shop, police recovered nearly 1 pound of marijuana and 94 grams of THC vapes, and both business owners may request a hearing before the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Board. However, the board may require a remediation plan outlining how each property owner will prevent future unlicensed cannabis activity before allowing access to the premises again, and property owners also face potential civil fines up to $10,000 per location under the district's cannabis enforcement policies. DC Code 7-1671.06A also outlines procedures for conditional licensing of cannabis businesses, and city officials have repeatedly encouraged unlicensed operators to apply during the designated open application periods to transition into legal compliance. The dual closures mark the continuation of an aggressive citywide enforcement strategy aimed at pushing the cannabis industry towards a regulated framework while protecting public health. And ABCA says it will continue monitoring retail activity and initiating enforcement when warranted, you guys. Well, DC, sounds like it's going to be the new New York, and man, today is not the day. What do y'all got to say?
Trap City, man. Trap City, man.
Right? Trap City,
I mean,
DC.
that was bold, you know?
Mm-hmm. So I find it funny that both the shops had like less than 1 pound of weed, or just over 1 pound of weed. I find that kind of humorous.
Funny that somebody had the sack to just have a pound of shrooms sitting in the smoke shop.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it said mushroom chocolates. I didn't say like loose mushrooms. It said mushroom chocolates, I believe.
Ah, I see. Okay, well, I digress.
All includes the packaging and all the weight and things of that nature.
Exactly.
So, you know, like 3 times the amount it actually is.
Yeah, I loved how they quantified the vapes as a weight as opposed to a quantity number.
Yeah.
What do you guys say, Todd?
It's hard for them to either multiply usually 0.5 times the quantity number or 1 gram times the quantity number, as most vapes contain, and substance.
They could easily
just for them to do that math.
But they could just easily add up. You know what? There was 500 half-gram vapes, and there was 1,000 full-gram vapes. It's pretty. It's not that difficult if they already counted this much.
Doesn't sound as good.
Yeah. Cop math is better. Is that what you're saying, Michael?
They should be out of the business. It's literally a business base.
Cop math is big numbers, man. Big business, big numbers. Big warrants.
I mean, cop education is far and few between.
Any thoughts on this, Yarrow, before we roll out? He's
No,
quiet.
sir.
He's quiet. All right. Well, thank you all.
Just to me, I
What?
was going to say, it's just continued dispensary police in different states going through, and not necessarily, it's not a crime, it's not illegal. People can possess it, people can sell it. It's just who can possess it and sell it.
Who can? It's more about who can commence commerce, I would say.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to Cloud Media Partners Anthony out there in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show. And we are off.